Imagine standing before a 3-ton giant who has given up on life. His eyes are empty, his massive body trembling, refusing to take another step forward. Rescue teams try everything: food, water, gentle commands, but nothing works. This broken elephant has decided that moving forward means more pain, more loss, more betrayal. But what happens next will prove that some bonds transcend time, distance, and even the deepest trauma. This is the true story of an elephant who stopped believing in humans until one voice from his forgotten past shattered every wall he built around his shattered heart. Hey, amazing souls! Before we dive into this incredible journey, drop a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I love connecting with our global animal hero community. And if stories like this touch your heart, hit that like button and subscribe, because every single one of you helps us share more of these powerful rescue moments with the world. Trust me, you'll want to stay until the very end of this one. The year was 2013, and in the dense forests of northern Thailand, near the historic town of Chiang Mai, a crisis was unfolding that would test everything we know about elephant memory, trauma, and the unbreakable connections between broken souls. Wildlife rangers had discovered an adult male elephant, later named Kham Lha, standing motionless on an abandoned logging trail. His body covered in scars, his spirit clearly demolished by years of abuse in the illegal timber trade. For 72 hours, this magnificent creature hadn't moved more than a few feet. He refused food, barely drank water, and showed no response to the dedicated team surrounding him. Veterinarians checked for physical injuries, but the wounds ran far deeper than flesh and bone. Kham Lha had been psychologically destroyed, and every attempt to guide him toward the sanctuary waiting just 3 miles away ended in failure. What nobody knew was that somewhere in the fragments of this elephant's traumatized mind, a memory was sleeping. A memory so powerful that when awakened, it would rewrite everything we understand about animal consciousness, loyalty, and the devastating cost of separation. To understand Kham Lha's complete shutdown, we need to go back 10 years to 2003, when this elephant was just a young bull working in the logging camps of Myanmar's border regions. During those brutal years, Kham Lha had one source of light in the darkness: a mahout named Darrick, a gentleman in his early 30s who treated elephants not as machines, but as sentient beings deserving of respect, kindness, and love. Darrick would spend hours talking to Kham Lha, singing traditional Karen tribal songs during rest periods, and sneaking extra sugarcane when the overseers weren't watching. He learned Kham Lha's moods, his fears, his quirks, like how the elephant would rumble softly whenever Darrick approached, a sound that researchers would later identify as elephant's equivalent of a cat's purr, a vocalization reserved for deep trust and contentment. But in 2004, everything shattered. The logging operation relocated, and Darrick, along with several other mahouts, was transferred to a different camp 300 miles away. Kham Lha was sold to another operation, one far more cruel, where his new handlers used bull hooks aggressively, worked him beyond exhaustion, and showed zero compassion. The elephant who once rumbled with joy became silent, withdrawn, a living ghost carrying logs through forests that felt like prison yards. Years of abuse followed, 9 long years of pain, neglect, and the slow death of hope. When authorities finally raided the operation in 2013 and liberated the elephants, Kham Lha was among them. But liberation meant nothing to a soul that had forgotten what safety felt like. By the time he reached that forest trail near Chiang Mai, surrounded by well-meaning rescuers, Kham Lha had made his decision. No more moving, no more trusting, no more hoping. The rescue team faced an impossible situation. Moving a refusing elephant isn't just difficult, it's dangerous and potentially fatal. Sedation strong enough to move him could stop his heart, and physical force would only deepen his trauma. They needed a miracle, but miracles don't usually announce themselves. They whisper from the past. Dr. Somsak Thongfakdi, the lead veterinarian from the Elephant Nature Park Foundation, had seen traumatized elephants before, but Kham Lha's case was unprecedented. In my 23 years working with rescued elephants, I had never witnessed such complete psychological collapse, he would later testify in a documentary about the rescue. His body was present, but his spirit had evacuated completely. The veterinary team set up a temporary camp around Kham Lha, monitoring his vital signs around the clock. His heart rate was elevated, indicating chronic stress, and his body temperature fluctuated dangerously. Blood tests revealed severe malnutrition and dehydration, but the elephant refused even the most tempting offerings: fresh bamboo shoots, ripe bananas, mineral-rich mud baths. Every traditional elephant calming technique failed spectacularly. On the second night, as temperatures dropped in the forest, the team wrapped thermal blankets around Kham Lha's legs and played recordings of forest sounds, hoping to trigger some instinctual response. Nothing. They brought in female elephants from the nearby sanctuary, knowing that matriarchs often have a calming effect on distressed males. Kham Lha didn't even acknowledge their presence, his eyes fixed on some invisible point in the distance, somewhere beyond this world. Media coverage began spreading across Thailand. News outlets called him the elephant who gave up, and social media exploded with theories, prayers, and heartbreak. Animal rights activists arrived at the perimeter, holding vigil. Everyone wanted to help, but nobody knew how to reach an elephant who had locked himself inside a fortress of trauma. Dr. Somsak made the difficult decision to reach out internationally, posting Kham Lha's story on elephant rescue networks across Southeast Asia. "We need anyone who has information about this elephant's past," the message read. "Any detail, any connection, anything that might help us understand what broke him so completely." The post included photos of Kham Lha's distinctive features: a notched left ear, a scar pattern on his right shoulder, and unusually light pigmentation around his eyes. The response was overwhelming, but ultimately unhelpful. Hundreds of messages flooded in, but most were well wishes or unrelated stories. The team was losing hope as day 3 dawned, and Kham Lha's condition visibly deteriorated. His breathing became labored, his eyes even more vacant. They were running out of time, and everyone knew it. Then, on the afternoon of the 3rd day, a message arrived that changed everything. It was from a small non-profit in Myanmar that tracked displaced mahouts from closed logging operations. The message was brief. "We believe we know this elephant. Distinctive ear notch matches our records. Original mahout named Darrick. Last known location Mae Sot district, requesting permission to make contact." Dr. Somsak's hands trembled as he read the message. Could it be possible? Could Kham Lha's original caretaker still be alive, still be findable after 10 years? The odds seemed astronomical, but at this point, astronomical odds were better than watching this magnificent creature die of a broken heart. Within 2 hours, the non-profit had located Darrick. He was working at a small elephant sanctuary near the Thai-Myanmar border, having left the logging industry years ago, haunted by the elephants he'd been forced to abandon. When they told him about Kham Lha, Darrick went silent for a long moment. Then, his voice cracking with emotion, he said 5 words that would set everything in motion. "I never forgot him either." The race was on. Darrick immediately requested leave from his sanctuary and began the 7-hour journey to Chiang Mai. But would he arrive in time? And more importantly, after 10 years of separation and trauma, would Kham Lha even remember the man who had once been his entire world? The rescue team could only wait, hope, and pray that elephant memory was as powerful as science suggested. Darrick arrived just before sunset on the 3rd day, stepping out of a dusty pickup truck with tears already streaming down his weathered face. He was older now, grayer, carrying the weight of a decade in his posture. But his eyes held the same gentleness that had once comforted a young elephant in the darkest logging camps. Dr. Somsak briefed him quickly about Kham Lha's condition, warning him that the elephant might not respond, that 10 years was a lifetime in traumatic circumstances, that expectations should be managed. But Darrick wasn't listening to caution. He was staring past the veterinarian, past the equipment and the worried team members, focusing entirely on the massive silhouette standing motionless 50 meters away. "That's him," Darrick whispered, his voice barely audible. "I can see it in the way he holds his head. That's my Kham Lha." The rescue team created a clear path, stepping back to give Darrick space. Everyone held their breath. Cameras were rolling, both for documentation and because somehow everyone sensed they were about to witness something extraordinary. The forest seemed to go quiet, even the birds stopping their evening songs, as if nature itself understood the gravity of this moment. Darrick began walking slowly toward Kham Lha, his bare feet making almost no sound on the forest floor. 20 meters, 15 meters. The elephant showed no reaction, still locked in his catatonic state, still refusing to acknowledge the world around him. 10 meters. Darrick stopped, took a deep breath, and did something that science would later study extensively. He began to sing. It was a Karen tribal song, one of the same melodies he had sung to Kham Lha during their years together. The words spoke of forests and rivers, of friendship between earth and sky, of bonds that survive even when everything else burns away. Darrick's voice was rough, untrained, cracking with emotion, but it carried across the clearing with devastating tenderness. For 3 long seconds, nothing happened. The elephant remained frozen and hearts around the clearing began to sink. But then, slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, Kham Lha's left ear twitched. Just a small movement, but everyone saw it. The massive head began to turn, degree by aching degree, until those empty eyes found Darrick's face. What happened next would be replayed millions of times on social media, analyzed by elephant behavior experts, and cited in academic papers about animal cognition and emotional memory. Kham Lha's entire body shuddered, a full system tremor that started at his shoulders and rippled down to his feet. His trunk, which had hung limp for 3 days, suddenly lifted, extending toward Darrick with tentative, almost fearful hope. Then came the sound that broke every heart present, a rumble so deep and so full of raw emotion that it seemed to come from the earth itself. It was the same rumble Darrick remembered, the purr of recognition and love, but now mixed with something else: grief, confusion, overwhelming relief. Kham Lha took his first voluntary step in 72 hours, then another, moving faster now, closing the distance between himself and the man he thought he'd lost forever. Darrick opened his arms wide, still singing through his sobs, as 3 tons of traumatized elephant crashed into him with desperate gentleness. Kham Lha wrapped his trunk around Darrick's body, rumbling continuously now, that deep vocalization scientists call contact calling, the sound elephants make when reuniting with separated family members. The elephant's eyes, empty for so long, were now streaming tears, the clear fluid mixing with dust on his weathered face. For 10 minutes straight, neither moved. Darrick pressed his forehead against Kham Lha's massive head, whispering apologies, promises, reassurances. The elephant's trunk explored Darrick's face, his shoulders, his hands, relearning every detail, confirming what his ears and ancient memory had already told him. This was real. This was home. This was the human who had treated him like family when the world treated him like machinery. The rescue team watched in stunned silence, many openly weeping. Dr. Somsak would later admit, in that moment, every scientific paper I'd ever read about animal consciousness felt inadequate. We weren't watching a simple recognition response. We were witnessing love, forgiveness, and the kind of emotional depth we arrogantly assume only humans possess. As darkness settled over the forest, something remarkable continued to unfold. Kham Lha, who had refused all sustenance for 3 days, suddenly became interested in food again. When Darrick offered him a bundle of sugarcane, holding it exactly the way he had a decade ago, the elephant accepted it gently, eating slowly while keeping his trunk in constant contact with Darrick's shoulder, as if afraid the human might disappear again. The veterinary team quickly assessed Kham Lha's willingness to move forward. Darrick began walking slowly toward the sanctuary, singing softly, and for the first time in 72 hours, Kham Lha followed. Not reluctantly, not with resistance, but with eager determination, his massive feet finding purpose again. The 3-mile journey that had seemed impossible that morning was completed in just under 2 hours, with Kham Lha never more than a trunk's length from Darrick's side. When they arrived at the Elephant Nature Park just before midnight, the other elephants, over 30 rescued individuals, gathered at the fence line, their rumbles creating a chorus of welcome that echoed across the valley. Sanctuary founder Lek Chaylert, a legendary figure in elephant conservation, personally opened the gates. She had prepared a special enclosure with soft earth, fresh water, and medicinal plants. But she knew the real healing wouldn't come from habitat amenities. That first night, Darrick slept in the enclosure with Kham Lha, something technically against protocol, but emotionally non-negotiable. The elephant stood guard over his sleeping friend, occasionally touching him gently with his trunk, as if repeatedly confirming this wasn't a dream. Security cameras captured these moments, footage that would later be used in wildlife documentaries worldwide, showing the depth of cross-species emotional bonds. Over the following weeks, Kham Lha's transformation accelerated. He began socializing with other elephants, particularly a matriarch named Mai Bua Thong, who took him under her protective guidance. He rediscovered play behaviors, splashing in mud pools and engaging in gentle sparring with younger males. But every evening, without fail, he would return to the fence line where Darrick waited, and they would spend hours together in comfortable silence. Darrick made a life-altering decision. He resigned from his position at the Myanmar sanctuary and accepted a permanent role at the Elephant Nature Park, specifically as Kham Lha's primary caretaker. "I abandoned him once, even though it wasn't my choice," Darrick explained to reporters. "I won't make that mistake again. This elephant saved my life by forgiving me. The least I can do is spend the rest of my life earning that forgiveness." The psychological assessment conducted 6 months post-rescue revealed remarkable healing. Kham Lha's stress hormones had normalized. His weight had increased by over 400 pounds, and his behavioral patterns showed all indicators of a psychologically healthy elephant. Dr. Somsak published a case study titled "The Therapeutic Power of Familiar Voices," a case study in elephant trauma recovery that has since become required reading in veterinary psychology programs. But perhaps the most powerful moment came 1 year after the rescue, during a ceremony honoring Darrick and the rescue team. As speeches were given and awards presented, Kham Lha stood calmly beside his friend, occasionally rumbling softly. When Darrick received his recognition, he turned to the elephant and said something in Karen dialect that wasn't translated for the audience. Whatever those words were, they made Kham Lha's rumble deepen with what could only be described as contentment. The story of Kham Lha and Darrick became a rallying cry for elephant welfare reform across Southeast Asia. Their reunion was cited in legislative debates about phasing out elephant logging, improving conditions for working elephants, and recognizing elephants' emotional needs as equal to their physical needs. Sometimes one voice breaking through one elephant's darkness can illuminate an entire movement. The scientific community became fascinated with Kham Lha's case, particularly because it provided rare documentation of long-term memory in traumatized elephants. Dr. Joshua Plotnick, a renowned elephant cognition researcher from Hunter College, traveled to Thailand specifically to study the reunion. His analysis revealed something extraordinary. Elephants process emotional memories through the hippocampus and amygdala in ways remarkably similar to humans, but with potentially even greater durability. What makes Kham Lha's recognition of Darrick so scientifically significant, Dr. Plotnick explained in his research, is that it occurred despite a decade of severe trauma that should have theoretically overwritten or suppressed earlier positive memories. Instead, the bond formed during Kham Lha's formative years remained intact, dormant but unbroken, waiting for the right trigger to reactivate it. This tells us that elephant emotional architecture may be even more resilient than we imagined. The reunion also sparked important conversations about the mahout system itself. Traditionally, mahouts develop lifelong bonds with elephants, but modern economic pressures and illegal operations often sever these relationships, creating psychological damage on both sides. Animal welfare organizations began advocating for mahout continuity programs, ensuring that when elephants are rescued or relocated, efforts are made to maintain or reunite them with compatible human caregivers. Darrick became an unexpected spokesperson for this movement. Despite his natural shyness, he began speaking at conferences, sharing Kham Lha's story not as a feel-good tale, but as evidence of systemic cruelty within the logging and tourism industries. People think elephants are resilient because they're big, he would say, his voice steady with conviction. But inside, they're fragile. They remember everything, the good and the bad. When we break that trust, we don't just hurt them temporarily. We damage them forever, unless we're willing to do the hard work of healing. The Elephant Nature Park itself experienced a surge in support following Kham Lha's story. Donations increased by 340%, allowing the sanctuary to expand its capacity and rescue 12 additional elephants within the next year. Volunteers from 43 countries applied to work at the sanctuary, many citing Kham Lha and Darrick's reunion as their inspiration. The economic impact enabled the sanctuary to hire local communities, creating conservation jobs that competed economically with exploitative elephant tourism. Educational programs began incorporating Kham Lha's story into curricula about animal cognition, emotional intelligence, and conservation ethics. Schools across Thailand received teaching materials titled The Elephant Who Remembered, using the reunion as a launching point for discussions about empathy, memory, and the responsibilities humans have toward other species. One teacher in Bangkok reported that after studying Kham Lha's case, her students organized a fundraiser that collected enough money to support 3 rescued elephants for an entire year. Interestingly, the reunion also affected other elephants at the sanctuary who had witnessed it. Behavioral observations noted that several traumatized elephants showed accelerated social integration in the months following Kham Lha's arrival, as if his healing provided a template or inspiration. Mebua Thong, the matriarch who had adopted Kham Lha, became noticeably more patient with newly arrived elephants, suggesting that witnessing recovery can create ripple effects through elephant social structures. The footage of the reunion, that initial moment when Kham Lha first heard Darrick's voice, became one of the most viewed animal rescue videos in internet history, surpassing 150 million views across platforms. But more importantly, it changed viewers' perception of elephants. Comment sections filled with people sharing their own stories of animals they'd known, recognizing for the first time that emotional depth isn't a human monopoly. Yet Darrick remained humble about the attention. "I didn't do anything heroic," he insisted during one interview. "I just showed up and reminded him that he mattered to someone. That's not heroism, that's basic decency, and it should be the minimum we offer to any creature capable of loving us back." The sanctuary's veterinary director noted something profound about Kham Lha's ongoing behavior. Even years after the reunion, Whenever Darrick traveled away from the sanctuary for any reason, Kham Lha would wait at the fence line during the expected return time. This wasn't anxiety or distress, it was anticipation, trust, the confidence that this time the separation was temporary and the reunion was guaranteed. 5 years after that life-changing reunion in the Chiang Mai forest, Kham Lha has become one of the sanctuary's most stable and socially integrated elephants. He has formed deep friendships with other rescues, particularly with a younger male named Thong Bai, who arrived at the sanctuary severely malnourished and terrified. Kham Lha, once broken himself, became Thong Bai's primary comfort, staying close during the newcomer's difficult adjustment period, teaching him through patient example that humans can be trustworthy. Dr. Somsak, observing this mentorship, noted the beautiful irony. The elephant who needed a voice from his past to heal is now becoming that voice for others. Kham Lha is showing traumatized elephants that recovery is possible, that trust can be rebuilt. He's proof that even the most shattered hearts can find wholeness again. This transformation from victim to healer represents the ultimate triumph over trauma. Darrick, now in his mid-40s, has expanded his role beyond Kham Lha's primary caretaker. He trains new mahouts in trauma-informed elephant care, emphasizing the importance of vocal consistency, patience, and recognizing that every elephant carries invisible wounds, requiring different healing approaches. His training program, now called the Kham Lha Protocol, has been adopted by 17 sanctuaries across Asia, changing how thousands of elephants are treated post-rescue. The protocol includes specific recommendations: maintain consistent caregivers whenever possible, use vocal patterns and songs to create auditory safety anchors, allow elephants time to grieve and process without rushing integration, and most importantly, recognize that physical rescue is only the beginning. Psychological healing requires commitment measured in years, not weeks. These principles, born from one elephant's breakdown and recovery, are now saving countless others from similar despair. Media requests still arrive regularly, everyone wanting to update Kham Lha's story, but Darrick carefully limits exposure, protecting his friend from becoming a spectacle. He's not a viral video, Darrick explains firmly. He's a living being who deserves privacy and peace. We share his story not for entertainment, but for education, to change how people think about elephants, memory, and the costs of exploitation. On the 10th anniversary of their reunion, the sanctuary organized a small private ceremony. No press, no crowds, just staff, long-term volunteers, and the elephants themselves. Darrick stood before Kham Lha and sang the same Karen song that had broken through the darkness a decade earlier. The elephant rumbled immediately, that same deep vocalization of recognition and love, and the two stood together as the sun set over the mountains, a living testament to the power of voice, memory, and unbreakable bonds. What makes Kham Lha's story ultimately so powerful isn't just the dramatic rescue or the emotional reunion. It's what it reveals about the inner lives of animals we've historically treated as resources rather than persons. Elephants don't just remember, they love, grieve, hope, and heal. They form attachments that survive years of separation and abuse. They forgive even when humans don't deserve forgiveness. They teach us, if we're willing to learn, that consciousness comes in many forms, all deserving of respect. The sanctuary's visitor center now features a permanent exhibition titled The Voice That Saved a Life, documenting Kham Lha's journey with photos, videos, and educational materials. But the most powerful element is a simple audio station where visitors can hear Darrick singing the Karen song, the same melody that called an elephant back from the edge of death. Many visitors leave in tears, finally understanding that the animals we share this planet with aren't so different from ourselves. Kham Lha's medical records show a healthy elephant entering his senior years with excellent prognosis for a long life ahead. But his true legacy isn't measured in years, It's measured in changed minds, reformed policies, rescued elephants, and the countless people who now understand that every creature deserves the chance to hear a voice that reminds them they matter. Sometimes, saving a life doesn't require grand gestures or expensive interventions. Sometimes, it just requires showing up and saying, in whatever language love speaks, "I remember you. I never forgot. And I'm here now." And that's what Darrick gave Kham Lha. And in return, Kham Lha gave the world proof that even in our darkest moments, one familiar voice can change absolutely everything. Today, if you visit the Elephant Nature Park, you might see an older elephant standing near the fence line at sunset, rumbling contentedly as a gray-haired mahout approaches with fresh sugarcane and a gentle song. You might witness the trunk wrapping around familiar shoulders, the comfortable silence of two souls who found each other against impossible odds. And if you're lucky, you might hear the guide explain that what you're watching isn't just friendship, it's proof that love transcends species, that memory can survive trauma, and that sometimes the most broken among us just need to hear one voice from our past to remember how to move forward again. Kham Lha stopped walking because he'd forgotten that the world held anything worth walking toward. But Darrick's voice reminded him that some bonds don't break, some people don't forget, and some loves survive even a decade of darkness. That reminder didn't just save one elephant. It changed how we understand every elephant, every animal, every living being capable of remembering who loved them when the world was cruel. If this story touched your heart, honor Kham Lha by remembering this. Every animal has a story, a memory, a capacity for both suffering and joy. The voice they need to hear might be yours, through supporting sanctuaries, choosing ethical tourism, or simply recognizing that consciousness isn't a human monopoly. Be the voice that changes everything, because somewhere, someone is waiting to remember that they matter.